If you were to be in the jury of a trial and you saw two people come up to present their case, and maybe it was for murder, and then one side has a whole bunch of experts that are going to represent their client, and let's just say this is the defense. So the defense has about 10 different experts in different kinds of sciences and philosophy, and they have all this evidence. And then the judge tells the jury to go ahead and make their decision. You know, anybody would have to look and say, wow, there's an abundance of evidence that we have here, and there's no way we can overlook it. You know, this is the same thing that happens actually in our schools. You know, the schools, they will show us a lot of evidence for evolution. They will show you a lot of evidence for random mutations creating the complexity of life. And then there's no kind of evidence given for intelligent design. There's no kind of evidence given for the God of the Bible, but that evidence is there. And, you know, just like in any kind of court case, whenever you have experts explaining something, you know, these experts, they really don't know for sure if their client is telling the truth or not. They are simply hired on to defend their client, and they're going to do their best to do so. So what they're going to do is they're going to find as much evidence as they can that supports their claim, and they're going to throw away anything that goes against their claim. It's what the evolutionists do. But the truth is, all scientists do not think this way. All scientists do not believe in evolution. As a matter of fact, there was a paper put out called The Scientific Descent from Darwinism. And there was over 1,000 PhD scientists that signed this petition. And these are people, and they weren't all Christians. You know, some of them may have been, but most of them were just people that looked at the evidence objectively and said, you know what, even though the peer pressure from the majority of the peer review papers is telling us that they believe in evolution, and you might not be able to get grants and all these things if you don't go along with the flow, but we look at the evidence and it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up that evolution, that random mutations have created all of this order and all this design. It looks much more like there was some kind of intention inside of our genome. There's some kind of intention in creation. It doesn't look like random things coming together. It looks like design. So these scientists came together and they formed a website, and this is their official statement. We are skeptical of the claims for the ability of random mutations and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwinian theory should be encouraged. It should be encouraged. We should be encouraged to examine this deeper and to be skeptical of these claims. You know, this is what education should be about. Education should be about really objectively looking at stuff, not blindly believing anything, because this is the same claim they try to throw on believers. Like Christians, they love to say, oh, you just blindly believe. But this is exactly what is going on with the Darwinian theory. People just believe it because they're these scientists believe it. Well, I just believe it too. Instead of thinking for themselves and actually coming to a rational conclusion, they just automatically accept it blindly and by faith, because these things would have to take millions and millions of years and nobody was here. So this is a faith-based religion. One of the evidences that is very strong against Darwinian theory is the understanding of irreducible complexity. And this is the fact that, you know, the classic example is the mousetrap. If you have a mousetrap, you have a spring, you have a board, and you have a clap. And if you take one thing away from this mousetrap, then the mousetrap will not work. It won't function at all. So what would a mousetrap be without the spring? Well, it'd just be a board and a clap, and there would be no reason for it at all. It wouldn't be able to do anything. And there's many parts of our body and many parts of nature, many parts of our whole ecosystem that are this exact same way. They will not work without every single part of it. And the most classic example of this in our bodies is the bacterial flagellum. Check out this short video talking about the complexity, the irreducible complexity of the flagellum motor.
The bacterial flagellum has 2 gears, forward and reverse, water-cooled, proton motive force. It has a stator, it has a rotor, it has a U-joint, it has a drive shaft, it has a propeller. It's not convenient that we give them these names. That's truly their function.
In all, about 40 different protein parts are required to build a flagellar motor. Half of them are constructor proteins, specialized mechanisms that assemble the flagellum's individual components. Since its discovery, biologists have tried to understand how a machine of such superb design could have arisen gradually, without foresight or plan, through the biological pathway Darwin envisioned.
As you see here, this complex structure that's put together has so many different parts that have to work all together, and without one, it would not be able to function. So therefore, it is irreducibly complex. You cannot reduce it at all and still have the flagellum. So this is one of the many examples we have of something that just doesn't match with the Darwinian theory. It shows us that things had to be created all together in order for them to work and to function. One thing we have to understand is that similarities do not mean common ancestor. This is what a lot of people believe. They believe, oh, well, because there's similarities in DNA, we share a lot of DNA similarities with apes or with a lot of different things. We're actually like 98% similar to a head of lettuce. People don't even know this, but does that mean we evolved from lettuce? But people will say because we have similarities, that means that we grew from these things, and that's just one way of interpreting things. People have to understand that evidence isn't objective. Evidence doesn't speak like we speak. It doesn't say anything. Evidence has to be interpreted, and it's interpreted through a worldview, through a prior belief. So if you have a belief in naturalism, if you have a belief that nature is all there is and matter is all there is, and there is no kind of mind prior to nature, then this is going to be your worldview, and you're going to look at everything through this worldview. So if you believe that, everything had to evolve into everything else. So if somebody was to look at a bicycle and then a motorcycle, you'd be like, okay, well, since there's so many similarities, they had to have been created from the same person. But that's just not true. In the same way we look at similarities between us and different animals or different plants, you might see similarities in our genomes and in our DNA, but that doesn't mean that we came from them. It just means we were made by the same creator. He used the same kind of tools. He used the same kind of structures and the same kind of information to make everything on this earth. Dell computers and Apple computers actually use a lot of the same codes, but that doesn't mean that they evolved from each other. This is just how things work better. They work better when they have a certain kind of code, and God knew this. God used certain kinds of DNA, certain kinds of information when he made everything on this earth, and this is why we have similarities. Isaiah 40:28. Did you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary. In his understanding, no one can fathom. And this is what we have to understand, the great capacity of God's knowledge, and how we can just see such a small part and have such small understandings, and we can think that we know so much, but God is a much, much more intelligent being than we could ever fathom. Charles Spurgeon was a real prominent Christian, and he was very gifted when it came to philosophy. This is one of his gifts. This is something he said about the Darwinian theory. This is something this was a letter that his wife found after his passing. And this was something that he had wrote to one of his students that had asked about the Darwinian theory. To Westwood, February 5th, 1887. He said, "Thanks for your most excellent and courteous letter. I have read a good deal on the subject and have never yet seen one fact or a tale of a fact which indicated the rise of one species of animal from another. The theory has been laid down, the facts fished up to support it. I believe it to be a monstrous error in philosophy, which will be the theme of ridicule before 20 years. One thought between, before 20 years pass away, there's going to be people making fun of this theory like no other, but I think there's one thing that he didn't predict. He didn't predict how attractive this theory would be to people for moral reasons, because this helps people get rid of God, the authority of God, the rules he set forth. And this is what Charles Lyell had said. He said that Charles Lyell was the one who created the geologic column. He's the one that came up with it. And you know what he said? That he was trying to free us from the law of Moses. Wow. Isn't that something? That just shows you how biased he was. That his goal wasn't to give us the truth, but was to free us from the law of Moses. But what if the law of Moses was actually true? That's a big problem. I don't think Charles Spurgeon knew how attractive this would be to people. People search out evolutionary science as a religion to get rid of the guilt that they have for denying the God that created them. So if I was on this jury and I was to look at the evidence for Darwin theory and I was to look at the evidence for creation, I think I would have to state John 3:19. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil.